If I told you that the best legal advice we've ever given a client was don't do the deal, would that surprise you? I think one of the biggest misconceptions about lawyers is that our job is to draft documents, negotiate contracts, and tell people what the law says. No wonder they think AI is going to take us over. Of course, those things are super, super important. They are the foundations of what we provide. But if that is all your lawyer is doing, I honestly think you're missing out on one of the biggest opportunities to grow your business. The businesses that we work with don't just need solicitors, they need proper commercial advisors. They need people who understand what they're trying to achieve, who challenge them, who ask the awkward questions, and who sometimes tell them things that they don't necessarily want to hear. Because here is the reality. The law is only ever there to support a commercial decision. It should not be driving the commercial decision in the first place. Let me explain exactly what I mean by this. One of the questions that I get asked all the time is, can you draft us a shareholders agreement? That's not really what the client is asking though. I mean, absolutely, yes we can. But before we draft anything, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because that's what you're trying to get to the nub of. So why are you bringing this person in? What do you want them to achieve within your business? Why do they need equity within your business? Why do you need to do this now? What happens if this person leaves in 6 months? Should their shares actually vest over time? Should they even become a shareholder at all? Most founders are expecting a legal discussion, what should be in each clause of the document. Instead, they're getting a commercial discussion because once you've answered those questions, the legal document almost writes itself. The shareholders agreement is simply recording the commercial deal you've already agreed. The difficult part isn't drafting it. The difficult part is deciding what's actually right for the business and making sure you have the right commercial advice to do that. Exactly the same thing happens with business acquisitions. People often assume that buying a business is all about agreeing the right price. It really isn't. Price is one line in what might be an 100-page agreement. The questions that I'm interested in are things more along the lines of, why is the seller actually selling? That's always the first question I ask. What happens if the founder leaves the day after completion and doesn't help you do a handover? Where does the goodwill in the business actually sit? Are the key customer relationships tied to the business, or are they tied to one specific individual? If the answer is one individual, are you really buying a business, or are you buying somebody's personal network that might just up sticks and leave once you spend the cash? Those questions are not legal, they are commercial, but they often have a much bigger impact than anything I could draft into a contract. In fact, some of the best legal advice that we have ever given clients has been not to proceed with a deal. Don't buy the business. Don't sign the lease. Don't appoint that person as a director within your company. Don't give away 30% of your company. Nobody really celebrates the deal that never happened. Nobody posts on LinkedIn saying, fantastic news, we decided not to buy a company today. But sometimes those are the decisions that save businesses hundreds of thousands of pounds and allow you to grow in the process. I think that's something that people often misunderstand about lawyers. Our success should not be measured by how many deals we complete. It should be measured by how many good decisions we help clients make, whether that's buy the business or not. Sometimes completing the deal is the right answer for the client. Sometimes walking away can be the right choice. Both outcomes can represent excellent legal advice. Another thing I hear quite a lot is that lawyers slow businesses down. And if I'm honest, I do understand why people think that. I've seen it with legal advisors. We've all experienced contracts going backwards and forwards for weeks, months. I have seen years. We've seen long emails, we've seen pages of comments, we've seen arguments over wording. But I actually think that good legal advice should make your business move faster, not slower. Now that probably sounds like a strange thing for a lawyer to actually say, but think about it properly. If you've got well-drafted terms and conditions already in place, you don't spend weeks renegotiating every single new client contract. If you've got a proper shareholders agreement in place and signed, you're not scrambling to agree what happens when somebody leaves the business. If your employment contracts properly protect your confidential information and your client relationships, you sleep a little easier at night when a senior employee resigns. If your commercial contracts are fit for purpose, your sales team can get deals over the line much more quickly because everyone already knows the framework. There's no scrambling around. Good legal work removes the friction. It creates certainty in your business, and certainty creates speed. What slows businesses down isn't the lawyers, it's uncertainty. It's trying to solve problems after they've already happened instead of preventing them in the first place. The other thing that I think founders sometimes get wrong is how they measure the value of legal advice. They look at their fee. And of course, that is understandable. We're all lawyers, right? We get this terrible reputation. And every business has budgets. Every business needs to manage their cost centre. But I'd encourage you to think about legal fees slightly differently. Imagine you hire one lawyer for £500. They review your contract and they tell you it's legally acceptable, you can sign. You hire another lawyer for £2,500. They tell you not to sign it because they've identified a commercial issue that could cost your business your biggest customer, or could cost your business thousands. Which lawyer was actually cheaper in the long run? The one with the lower invoice, or the one who stopped you making an expensive commercial mistake in your business? I genuinely believe that the cheapest legal advice is often the most expensive in the long run. Not because cheaper lawyers aren't good lawyers, that is not what I'm saying at all, far from it. But because if your advisor is only looking at the legal wording and not thinking about the wider commercial outcome, they're only solving half your problem for you. One of the things we say internally at Jamieson Law a lot is we don't want to just answer the question that the client asks. We want to answer the question that they should have asked if they had had all of the commercial and legal knowledge together. Sometimes a client comes to us asking for a contract to be drafted. Actually, what they need is an entirely different commercial structure. Sometimes they ask us to review a lease. What they really need is advice on whether these premises make sense for the business in the first place and whether the terms of the lease make sense as the business grows. Sometimes they'll come to us asking to make someone a director. What they actually need is someone to explain that there are other ways of recognising and retaining talented people without fundamentally changing the governance of the company and bringing extra legal obligations to everyone. Those conversations create real value, far more value than simply marking up a document. I think the legal profession has changed enormously over the last 10 years. Businesses don't just want technically brilliant lawyers anymore. It's obviously important to have that too, but businesses expect that. What they're looking for now are advisors who understand business, advisors who understand growth, who understand investment, who understand recruitment, who understand sales, who understand the pressures founders are under every single day. Because if your lawyer understands your business, they'll give you better legal advice. And I think that's where the biggest difference lies. The best lawyers don't think purely like solicitors. They're not just thinking about drafting. They're thinking like commercial directors. They are constantly asking themselves, what is the client actually trying to achieve here? What is the commercial objective? Is there a simpler, more efficient way of doing this? Is there a better way of protecting the business than what the client has suggested? Sometimes the answer is a legal document. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's about rethinking the structure entirely, and that's okay, because our job isn't to sell documents. Our job is to make clients make better decisions. So if there's one thing that I would leave you with today, it's this. When you're choosing a solicitor, don't just ask yourself whether they are technically excellent and the best at what they do. Ask yourself whether they would sit comfortably around your leadership table. Could you see a space for them? Would they challenge you? Would they understand your commercial objectives and what you're trying to achieve? Would they be prepared to tell you not to do the deal if that's genuinely the right advice? Because those are the advisors who create the most value for the long term in your business. They're the advisors who help your business grow. And in my view, that's exactly what modern legal advice should look like. If you've enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and gave the video a like. It really helps us reach more founder-led businesses with practical, commercial, legal advice that can help them grow and scale their own businesses. And if there's a topic that you'd like me to cover in a future episode, leave it in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks again for listening.